This daily routine helped me personally close over $3 million of sales just in the last couple years of my career alone. And this exact routine I'll be teaching you today so that you can also put your own sales on rocket boosters. So hey guys, my name is Lloyd and I've been in sales for almost a decade now. And in that time, I've been in door-to-door, I've sold software, and in the last couple years, I even built my own company that helps other people recruit and train top-performing sales reps. So in that time, I've actually learned quite a lot about what it takes to just build a really great daily routine to get you in the sales group day in and day out. This is not only what I've used for my own success, but I've also taught this exact same routine to my own sales reps and the reps that I've hired for other clients, and we've seen resounding success at every single level. So with that being said, let's just get straight into it. All right, there's a couple overarching best practices that I would say any and all teams and salespeople really should implement. Okay, so the first best practice is that you want to have a very organized and clean calendar. I treat my calendar almost like a religious person would treat the Bible, right? For me, it really dictates how my entire day goes. So this is a pretty good example of how my calendar looks like. Now keep in mind, the way that I've organized this calendar is reflective of my role as a CEO and founder. If you're in sales, you might have a little bit of a different looking calendar than this, but this should give you some inspiration. So I've really segmented my day into sales calls, which is in blue, client work, which is in green, and then interviews and internal meetings and deep work all have their own separate color. I even have built in a specific section, yellow, for my own health and wellness. So you can see that I'm going to the gym and going to train and whatnot. So for you, how do you chunk off your day? I think the way that you can set it up is unique to your day-to-day flow, but this is really the way that I like to set it up. Now, something that's really cool is the to-do list here. You can actually utilize Google Calendar, and tasks is like built directly within the UI UX here. So you can actually just say add a new task. And for example, if you want to do follow-ups, you can say follow-up with John Smith. And let's say you want to set that up to be January the 31st. So it'll actually just show up directly here above the primary calendar. And then once you click OK, it'll be there. It'll remind you, there'll be notifications. And once it's done, you can just mark complete and it'll disappear. So I really like that there's multiple ways in which you can organize this part. Another best practice that I like to deploy is making sure that I'm chunking my day into blocks of time. And that way I can focus on specific activities. For example, let's say LinkedIn prospecting generally takes 2 hours of my day. Now, what you don't want to do is have 30 minutes of LinkedIn prospecting in the morning and then another 30 minutes in the afternoon and then another hour at the end of the day. Because every single time you're switching between different activities, your brain actually requires 15 to even 30 minutes to get into the zone again. And this is an issue because let's say you're constantly switching between activities such as LinkedIn prospecting, and then you're now doing phone calls or sales calls or whatever it may be. When you do that, you lose all the momentum from the previous task, and it takes your brain a little bit of time to really get into the flow of doing this new activity. And this is what we call attention splitting. So rather than needing to lose a bunch of efficiency in this way, it's better to just bang all of your activity out in a specific immediate flow. And then once you're done, you can move on to the next activity, right? So this is a much more efficient way to do things. An example of this could be 2 hours in the morning, LinkedIn or email prospecting. Then after that, 2 hours of just cold calling, and maybe you save the afternoon for just sales calls or team meetings or whatever else it might be. So this is what I call chunking. Sometimes you might have meetings that are booked into your calendar from clients or from other people in your team, and you don't have as much control over these different elements, right? Maybe you just have an hour call here, an hour call there, and you end up having a bunch of just random space in between these different activities. What you don't want to do is just waste this time. It can be very easy to just waste it because you're like, oh man, I have 30 minutes between these calls. Why don't I just do nothing and wait for this time to pass by? But that's why that to-do list is really great. I was talking about that to-do list earlier, where you can essentially have a bunch of these tiny little tasks, whether it be following up on old leads or giving calls to your existing clients that are in the pipeline. All these tiny little things, just get that type of stuff done between your major activities if you have a 30-minute break here or there, and that way you can get it all done. Now, let's get into what it is that you're gonna be doing during the day. And the first thing that I would say that you wanna do is optimize your workplace setup so that you are setting yourself up for success. So just sharing with you quickly how I've actually optimized my workplace setup. I've been utilizing multiple monitors and screens ever since I started doing sales over 8 years ago, and I just find it really helps the efficiency of how I work. And this is really the case because you no longer need to be worrying about switching between tabs and trying to understand and find out where your documents are. When you have multiple screens, it allows you to have access to much more information that allows you to work faster. So one of the things that I would definitely have would be their CRM. So for a setter, it might be their prospecting CRM, all of the DMs that they're sending, all the cold calls that they're making, where the prospects are in the conversation. So that might be something that they have. A closer might obviously have their pitch deck saved and bookmarked, as well as a sales script. Definitely the calendar is something that they would be saving as well. So there's just a lot of different things here, and you can just pretty much pin whatever you find is most useful or the things that you're often just like relying on the most in your day-to-day sales flow. Another really cool hack is that you could pin certain things to your actual Chrome browser. So instead of just using bookmarks, you can just like say pin this, and then it'll just turn into this small little icon here, and that way you can always refer to it, and I pretty much never delete these icons because I'm using them at all times. That's essentially your workstation setup, and every single morning you gotta make sure that it's all ready to go. And the second thing that I like to do in my day is just to establish the goals that I'm gonna have for this upcoming day. If it's a Monday, I'll even establish what the goals are for the entire upcoming week. So let's pretend that you're a setter. How many dials or outreaches are you going to want to do today? How many meetings do you want to book? Whereas let's say you're a closer or an account executive, you're probably thinking about your results much more so from a week to week or even month to month perspective, because it's hard to control your results on a single day. That being said, what are your goals for this week in terms of deals closed, in terms of opportunities that you're trying to move through the pipeline? How far along are you to hit that goal, right? And if you aren't where you need to be, what do you need to do to actually get there? Getting perspective on what your goals are and where you are in relation to your goals, and then what you need to do to actually get there, is super helpful because it sets the stage and it sets an intention for what you're gonna be even doing that entire day to crush it. So number 3 is I'm gonna very quickly just scan what is in my calendar for that specific day. So let's say I'm a closer, right? I'll quickly look through my calendar and I'll just see, all right, I have 4 or 5 calls today, and that's where I'm gonna be spending the majority of my time. If I'm a setter, then the day should, for the most part, be somewhat similar because I'll be spending 2 hours in the morning prospecting on LinkedIn, or I'll be spending 2 hours in the afternoon making phone calls. But generally speaking, before I actually attack the day, I do want to just quickly look at my calendar and just see, okay, I have 8 to 10 hours today to work. Here's generally speaking what I'm gonna be doing. Set that intention and just be aware of how the day is gonna flow. So number 4 is I actually like to get rid of all the follow-ups right in the beginning of the day. The reason why I like to get them done super early on in the morning is because these can be quite tedious, and if you leave it until the end of the day, oftentimes salespeople won't even do it just because they don't have the energy or the motivation. But the reality is follow-ups make up over 50% of a lot of the meetings that you're booking or the deals that you're closing. So if you're constantly just focusing on net new meetings booked or net new deals closed, you're gonna be missing out on this entire gold mine of opportunities that you could be bringing to the table. So once again, that's why I like to get it out of the way in the morning. That way I have the energy to get them done. No matter what, as long as the sales calls or the time slots to actually go and prospect new leads are in the calendar, they're gonna be done. So the follow-ups are the things that oftentimes just kind of get left aside. We're not gonna allow that to happen. Now, number 5 is after any sort of prospect interaction, whether it be a cold call or a Zoom call where I'm actually giving a bit of a pitch, it's really important that you document and record that interaction into your CRM. And this goes for both setters and closers. The reason why this is so important is because you're going to want to know the history of the interaction that you make with a prospect, because let's say in 2 weeks from now you talk to that same person again, you don't want to be talking about the same stuff. And worst case, let's say the conversation went really well. If you don't record it, what if you just forget to follow up? Because that deal could have actually converted. You could have gotten paid for that. But so many sales reps that I meet, because they failed to record that interaction and they failed to set a reminder for themselves to follow up, they just never do, and then money is left on the table. So that's why immediately, as soon as you have an interaction with a potential prospect, whether it be on the phone or even in the DMs, you immediately record it into your CRM to set your next steps, okay? Alongside with those call recordings. And it's really, really important that you don't wait until the end of the day to do this. Because once again, so many sales reps that I've met tell me,
oh yeah, like don't worry, I'll definitely record the notes, but I'll do it at the end of the day.
But just like how follow-ups are oftentimes so unsexy that they just get forgotten about, it's the same with recording these notes. By the end of the day, you might be so tired that you're like, oh, you know what? I don't want to record this activity. I don't want to push any of these notes into the CRM. And it just never gets done. And then you just like pretty much leave a lot of money on the table. Some automation softwares will make this a little bit easier for you. For example, if you're using a tool such as like Reply.io or Apollo, both tools in which I've put into the description box below. These are email outreach automation tools where the actual history of those dialogue will be immediately recorded. But let's say you're reaching out on Facebook Messenger, or you're reaching out just over a phone call. Those things will need to be a bit more manually recorded, so just keep that in mind, that technology can help, but it's not always going to be the end-all be-all of the solution. So I mentioned that it's really critical that you're documenting what the next steps specifically are. So what does that really mean? Well, in terms of sales, you're really just trying to write down what it is that will push the deal or the prospect closer to potentially buying. So let's say you're trying to just set appointments and someone has a little bit of an exchange with you over the DMs or over email. The next step might be, okay, this person seems like they're pretty interested, but they haven't booked a call yet. So 3 days from now, let me just set a reminder for myself to hit them up again so that I could actually bump it back to the top of their mind and hopefully book that call. If you're a closer, maybe you've already had a sales call with someone, but it seems that they need to talk to their stakeholders or their business partners, and they told you, hey, you know what? Hit me back up in say 3 or 4 days. So the next step might be that you're booking a call for 3 or 4 days from now with them, or you're just setting a reminder for yourself to follow up to see how they feel 3 or 4 days from now, just so that you make sure that you have a definitive line of entry into getting them to close that deal. Now, those are the primary activities that I'd be doing every single day as a salesperson, but there are certain things that need to be done more so on the weekly and even monthly level. And this would be primarily training, role plays, getting one-on-one feedback with my manager, and generally speaking, just putting in time and effort in order for me to improve my own skill level. These are things that you don't necessarily do every single day because that might take away from your activities when it comes to just sales tasks. But if you don't keep a specific and weekly intention of just making yourself better from a skill level, you're gonna oftentimes just start lagging behind and your skill might fall over. Now, the last thing that I'm gonna leave you with is that it's really important to remember that whether it be in sales or sports or any other hobbies, your overall performance is not just based on the hours that you're putting in during that activity. It's also about your ability to be intelligent about your hours off that activity. So getting the appropriate sleep every single day, 8 hours plus, getting the right nutrition in, eating healthy, making sure that you're also exercising a couple times a week and getting lots of sunlight. These are things that are also really important as well, and you'd be surprised at how often that people who don't do those things will end up seeing a lag in their overall success, even though they're working pretty hard in their day-to-day. So with that being said, please drop a like and a subscribe for this video. I'll be dropping a ton more free content about building sales teams and just excelling as a salesperson overall every single week just for you. So click that notification bell and you'll make sure that you're stayed notified. If you're watching this, it's probably because you care about understanding how to be the absolute best sales manager or salesperson that you can be. And if that's the case, I actually made this other video all about the differences between a really high performing sales rep versus a low performing sales rep. Any person who's in sales can benefit from this, so give it a quick watch. And by the way, if you just want help directly from me, by all means, book a call with me in the description box below. I've helped over 120 plus clients already when it comes to building out sales teams and optimizing their sales reps' performance. So hit me up and I'll be more than happy to give you a couple tailored recommendations. All right. So with that being said, cheers.